5 Live Formula One.
We've made it to the last leg of F1's triple header as the circus lands on the shores of the Red Sea. We're at the Jeddah Corniche circuit in Saudi Arabia for round 5 of the Formula One Championship. My name's Harry Benjamin, and joining me to look ahead to the weekend's action is reigning F1 Academy champion Abby Pulling and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Welcome, team. Are we all a bit tired, Andrew?
I certainly
5
am,
races,
Harry. Yes.
6 weeks. It's been pretty relentless.
It really has. Australia to China to Japan to Bahrain to Jeddah now, and we got 1 week off and then we're off to Miami. So, yeah, crazy.
I mean, Abby, as a driver as well, you know, obviously you've got to be at the top of your game every weekend, but that tiredness must creep in, especially in a triple header like this.
I mean, I love it.
No, it doesn't. Nothing. Never get tired.
I just love racing. So the more seat time, the better. But it does get quite demanding, I imagine, for the drivers and the race teams as well, going from one time zone to another. It can be hard to maintain that focus and that last 1% that you need to be at the front.
Now, we've got to ask, Abby, obviously you had a brilliant season last year, F1 Academy champion. What's life been like since the crowning? What's in store for you this year?
Oh, you know, there's jewels. I've got a golden toilet. No, it's nothing too crazy. I mean, the thing that I'm most obviously happy about is winning the title has led to a fully funded seat in GB3, which is so valuable for me as someone that's struggled with finances in the past. But yeah, just a lot of media, training, making sure I'm fit enough. I did a lot of work last year. So if the opportunity were to arise to move up the ranks, I could, make the most of it. And yeah, so far so good. Testing's underway, racing very soon.
Well, it's brilliant to see you make that next step. So we'll continue to watch you throughout the year as it unfolds. We've got lots coming up over the next hour or so. Is Max Verstappen on the verge of leaving Red Bull? And after his win in Bahrain last week, has Oscar Piastri got a stronger champion's mentality than his teammate Lando Norris? And of course, we'll be discussing how the rest of the weekend is shaping up after the first 2 practice sessions. All of that, and we'll hear from the reigning champ, along with the 2 McLaren drivers. But let's dive in with McLaren. Andrew, what have we learnt from not only the first few races, but particularly last week in Bahrain about the driver dynamic between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris?
We've learnt, first of all, that they've got the best car, and we've learnt that it's going to be a really interesting season between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, even if no one else gets involved. Lando Norris was by far the stronger McLaren driver last year. I say by far, we're talking about small margins at the very highest level of Formula One, but he was convincingly quicker than and better than Piastri over the season. This year, so far, the tables have turned completely, and Piastri has been the more convincing driver. He's got more poles, he's got more wins. He's not leading the championship, though. Norris is by 3 points by virtue of Piastri having a difficult race, unlucky race in Australia in the wet. And I think what we're seeing as well is the psychology and the personalities of those 2 drivers are really interesting. Piastri is so level-headed, so calm. Nothing seems to phase him. Nothing seems to affect him in the car or out of it. Norris is very much wear your heart on the sleeve sort of character. He's been talking about his difficulties with the driving characteristics of this McLaren, which Piastri has wedded with really nicely. So after 4 races, with another one coming this weekend in Saudi Arabia, it's really set up for a fascinating dynamic between the 2 of them.
Yeah, Abby, I mean, this difference in driver mentality, as Andrew said, Oscar Piastri almost has a touch of the Kimi Räikkönen about him. He's so laid back, he's so chilled out, nothing seems to faze him. And we don't want to lose the emotional outpouring that we see from Lando Norris. He's his first critic, he's his worst critic as well. But as a driver, is that something that can be the difference between being a championship challenger and not?
I think, at the end of the day, Lando is leading the championship. He's the one that's been outperforming Oscar at the moment, but Oscar just looks more solid, less mistakes are seeping through the cracks, and it seems long term he can be more consistent because of that, and that mentality that he has that's pretty ruthless in the sense of it doesn't matter if he's winning or losing. He just wants performance no matter what, and it's really interesting to see. I think there's both work, definitely. And I think McLaren know that they have two very different drivers, but I think they also fit McLaren so well in the same way. And it's, as you say, it's an interesting dynamic that we'll see obviously develop throughout the year.
Well, Lando Norris was asked what he's doing to right the wrongs.
I don't think I need to share it with... I share too many things, so... No, it's stuff that me and the team are working hard on trying to understand. It's clear that there are things that have changed and changed since last year when I was feeling very comfortable. And that's not allowing me to do as good of a job this year. It's not like I've been doing a bad job, but I'm definitely not able to be at the level that I should be and know I can be and want to be. So we're working hard to address them, and I've worked hard to try and understand them myself.
And this is a circuit that, of course, lots of drivers talk about the need for confidence because of the nature of it. How confident are you feeling for this weekend? And where do you think you'll be? Are you aiming for the podium, for the win? You're looking at me like...
Yeah, I'll just see as the weekend progresses. I mean, there are things that I'm, of course, going to come into this weekend and try and do differently and learn about. Have a different approach to things because I'm being forced in a way, not being forced by anyone, but to in order to perform better, I'm being forced to drive in a different way, in a different manner, and that I'm not used to, and that is not normal for me at all. So nothing's a guarantee. It's not like I'm going to go out and things are going to click into place and I'm going to feel wonderful all of a sudden. But I think I just have a better understanding of things. Hopefully that gives me more confidence altogether. But I have confidence in us as in a team, in kind of trying to get the most out of the car.
Lando Norris speaking to Ariana Bravo. Andrew, despite Norris leading the championship, being on pole position this season, winning races, he's still not 100% confident with this car.
No, there's a particular... It's going to be sound strange to people, but basically there's a point of the corner. It's all about the rotation of the car on corner entry. There's a point from between turn-in to apex where he's not got enough front end grip. He likes to have a strong front end. This car's not giving it to him. Piastri drives in a certain way that's slightly different. All drivers have a slightly different driving style, and it's not affecting him in the same way. What's interesting about the two of them is that, watching Piastri, he's only in his third year in Formula One, Piastri, let's not forget. Watching him last year, he was so consistent, so sort of error-free, so unflustered that you thought if he could raise his pace to the level of the absolute best, he was going to be a really formidable competitor for anybody. And this year, whether it's by him raising his game, which I think he has a bit, or Norris's game slightly dipping because of this car characteristic that I was talking about, he's now reached that level between the two of them. And so that's what makes it so fascinating, is Norris is going to be trying to tune the car to what he wants so he can then compete. And he's not going to be able to afford, I don't think, the ups and downs that have from time to time characterised his career.
Abby, when we talk about driving styles, can you kind of explain that a bit more? What is your driving style? And then if you're asked or have to change your style, how do you even go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, actually. I've found, even jumping into this GB3 car this year, that there's certain things that I prefer that my teammates don't, and so on and so forth. And we end up adapting setups between us to what we like. And it can be... For me, myself, I prefer being able to rotate the car myself with my feet. You almost drive the car with your feet. That's the way of explaining it. And it almost sounds like that's more what Oscar's doing, where he forces the car to rotate, whether it's a really aggressive drop off the brake to get that rear end round, or how he picks up the throttle. He's doing something which Lando hasn't ever had to do. And it's really tough when everything is feeling uncomfortable, it's feeling uncommon, to change that mindset and pick up that little habit that you've never had before, and that feeling that you've struggled to adapt to. It can be really frustrating, but it's obviously there. The car is there because Oscar had an incredible race in Bahrain.
It's still the quickest car, whoever's in it. It's just that one of them's going very slightly quicker in it than the other. And I think this is one of the fascinating nuances of motorsport in general and Formula One in particular. A lot of the people who are watching it have got no idea this is going on. They won't even understand what Abby meant when she said she's steering the car with her feet. What do they mean? That's what the steering wheel's for. But no, the car is constantly dancing on the edge of adhesion and it's constantly slipping. You can't see it really on the telly unless you get a really slow-mo thing. But it's like walking a tightrope downhill in the wind almost. And sort of manipulating the car around this sort of axis that it's on, trying to make sure it's at the right attitude. And that's what the drivers are meaning by balance. They're sensing the fine changes of that happening under them. And they want it to behave in a certain way for their sense of balance. But not everybody's sense of balance is the same. And that's where you get the nuances of pace in a racing car.
Well, let's hear from the man who was making that McLaren go slightly quicker last time out in Bahrain, Oscar Piastri.
It's been a great start to the season. I think obviously last week was a very special weekend and a performance that I'm very, very proud of. So hopefully we can keep that going. But yeah, everything's been good so far. I've been feeling happy with the car, happy with the team around me, and I think the results are reflecting that as well.
That championship gap is closing. You're a driver that has got quite the reputation for a very calm demeanour. Do you feel any pressure increasing as you see that the championship is close? I know we're very early in the season still, but is it something that does behind the scenes have any impact?
Not at this point. I think the best way of building a championship charge at the moment is by executing the best weekends you can. And at the moment, that's what I'm trying to do. Like you said, it's incredibly early still. So yeah, just trying to make sure you get the most out of every weekend is the most important thing. And I think if you can do a good job of that, then you'll be looking pretty good by end of the year.
Oscar Piastri then, feeling confident. Right, you're walking this tightrope. Which one is going to come out on top at the end of the season with the different driving styles, the different personalities, Lando Norris or Oscar Piastri?
It's so hard to say because they're so closely matched and it does turn on these nuances. So, for example, if McLaren can get the car to do what Norris wants it to do in this particular phase of the corner that he's struggling with at the moment, it could turn around and he could be the dominant driver, in small percentage terms, like he was last year. If they can't get that, he's constantly going to be on the back foot and it's going to be favouring Piastri. And I really don't know which way to go. And this is before we even discussed how Red Bull, McLaren and Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes are going to compete with them.
I would say for myself, purely on a consistency basis, I'd say Oscar probably will outperform by the end of the year, but I think Lando will win more races. That's purely how I kind of see it going. Who knows? But it just seems Oscar is impenetrable. He's got a really good head on his shoulders.
Well, you didn't sit on the fence there, Abby, so you can come back. Andrew, you've got work to do on that one, I'm afraid. We've done McLaren now, who are leading the Drivers and the Constructors' Championship. But what about Red Bull, Andrew, after last week in Bahrain? From the high of Japan to, let's face it, the low in Bahrain for Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda, despite a double point score, what next for the world champion reigning?
It's a good question. A victory for the ages in Suzuka and then just managing to scrape past Pierre Gasly's Alpine for 6th place on the last lap in Bahrain. It was a big fall from grace. And I think what Bahrain did was it highlighted all the weaknesses of the Red Bull car, basically. It's lacking balance, which we're back to this balance thing the drivers want. So the drivers don't know what it's going to do. It's unpredictable on corner entry. It's got lax front end grip in the middle of the corner and it's snappy on the rear on the exit. And that means that it puts more strain on the tyres, and Bahrain is a track that really strains the tyres. So it won't be that bad everywhere, but it does highlight that they're some way off where McLaren are. And it just highlights what a fantastic job Verstappen did in qualifying in Japan to put it on pole there, even if that was a track that didn't expose so many weaknesses in the Red Bull. They've got work to do, and that's spilling over into the off-track chat, which is what you're referring to, Harry. Helmut Marko, the Red Bull Motorsport advisor, said earlier in the week that they had great concern about Max Verstappen's future in the team. He's under contract till the end of 2028, Verstappen, but there are performance clauses in the contract. Verstappen is doing his best to play it down publicly. He's done a bunch of like what we would call in journalism non-denial denials this week, saying everybody's talking about it or about except me. Well, yes, Max, you might not be talking about it in public, but it doesn't mean that it's not a thing. So later in the year, not yet. I don't think he's actively thinking about it yet. Obviously, I can't read his mind, but from what I hear, it's not like a real major consideration for him right now. But as the summer develops, he's going to have to make a decision. Does he believe that Red Bull are the team that can carry him to more world championships in the future with the new regulations that are coming in 2026? Or does he feel that he'd be better off going somewhere else? And if so, where?
Well, that is the question that are being asked. But Abby, I mean, if he does leave Red Bull, hypothetically, that's bad news for the team, surely, because at the moment it's Verstappen that is able to provide that little bit of extra magic that launches them up a few more positions than where the car actually should be on raw pace. That's what it seems to be. So how do Red Bull deal with that? Because they've tried so many drivers alongside him. None of them can match Verstappen. Maybe the jury's not out yet on Tsunoda, we'll see. But they haven't found that next Verstappen yet. And at the moment, they're leaving themselves susceptible to having, let's face it, average drivers and then finishing in average positions.
I mean, they're in a tough position, and like I say, it's not even just the drivers. I mean, they've lost Adrian as well as Mr. Wheatley as well. He's moved on, so it seems like the team potentially could be shifting in the near future. But I mean, saying average drivers coming in, I think they're world class. You know, is the top 20 in the world. Let's not be too brutal, but. No, they're in a tough position. I mean, I'd love to see a Danny Rick come back, personally.
Oh, you're on that train.
Yeah, no, but who knows? And it's big boots to fill. I think Max is a driver that can really bring a car above where it should be.
There are lots of question marks hanging over Red Bull at the moment, and they stem back to the sorts of things Abby was talking about there. Adrian Newey, the greatest designer in Formula One history, left in April last year. That was in the midst of, and as at least partly caused by, the allegations that were levelled against Christian Horner by a female employee, which he was cleared of by 2 internal investigations. Jonathan Wheatley, their longtime sporting director, the guy who was in charge of, pit stops, race operations, basically, made them such a finely honed machine. He's now gone to Sauber, which is becoming Audi. And, lo and behold, suddenly, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's not, their pit stops aren't as good as they used to be. Will Courtney, their head of strategy, he's already signed to join McLaren in 2026. And Red Bull almost like is a sort of act of spite or pique, if you like, because of the relationship between Christian Horner and Zach Brown, McLaren chief executive officer. They're not letting him go yet, even though he's basically already sort of half in his mind in McLaren. These are 3 pivotal characters in the Red Bull team. Meanwhile, having lost Newey, they still haven't been able to get the car to work in the way they want. So what does the loss of Newey mean for their design team and its ability long term? Another unanswered question. It's just questions at the moment over Red Bull. There's no answers. But what Verstappen is doing for them is he's lifting the team to a level that probably no other driver could do. Even if they got, say, George Russell, for example, to replace Verstappen, if Verstappen went to Mercedes, as an example, next year. He's an exceptional driver. But is he as exceptional as Verstappen? So the idea of losing Verstappen, that's why it's of such magnitude over at Red Bull at the moment.
Well, lots going on in the background, but what can we expect from Verstappen this weekend? This is what he thinks.
Yeah, I hope a bit better than Bahrain. I mean, a few more high-speed corners, different tarmac. I hope that we can, be a bit more competitive and maybe a bit more in the middle between the 2 races. Potentially.
Is there a quick fix to the issues you've got with the car? And where would you like to see the team focus its resources? 25, 26?
I think we've experienced enough to focus on this year and next year. But naturally, we're still trying things with the car. Not even outside of bringing parts to the car, just setup-wise, other things that we can improve. Is constantly trying to improve the car, I guess. And that's what we'll try to do again this weekend.
So, if Verstappen were to go elsewhere, Andrew, I mean, you already mentioned one team in the form of Mercedes. If he goes there, maybe George Russell leaves that team and in goes Verstappen. But what are the other options available to him?
Well, we don't even know whether Mercedes is a genuine option, but we consider it to be because Toto Wolff was pretty transparent in his desire to sign Verstappen through last year. He tried to play that down as this season started, but I don't think he's going to have stopped being an admirer of Max Verstappen's talent. I think the bottom line is any team who could get him would take that possibility extremely seriously. So you can only look at the other top teams. I think McLaren you can probably rule out because they're pretty happy with Norris and Piastri. They say that they claim that's the best driver lineup in Formula One. Ferrari, they've got Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, both of them under contract long term, but if they could get Verstappen, would they take that seriously? And then the other one is Aston Martin. They're becoming the Honda Works team next year. Fernando Alonso is still under contract to the end of 2026, so maybe it'll be 1 year early for Aston Martin. But you could certainly see him potentially going there in 2027, especially if Aston Martin and Honda look good in the new regulation era.
Abby, what motivates drivers? Because sometimes I get the impression from Max Verstappen that he could very easily retire fairly young, having been very satisfied with his achievements. He's had an unbelievable career that started at such a young age. You almost get the sense at times that what more is there to achieve on his side? But is something like this where you're suddenly the cards you've been dealt are not good and you're having to claw your way up, almost in a good way reinvigorate him and remotivate him to carry on going in Formula One?
I do think every driver is different, and with Max, he does seem like the guy that next year he could be like, actually, you know what, I'm happy, I'll settle down and do something else now.
I fancy a bit of sports cars or something.
Yeah, and obviously with his sim racing, he's very ingrained into that, and he had to kind of get barred from it as it was impacting a bit of his race weekends at one point. But he seems happy to just be within the world of motorsport and obviously wanting to be at the front and the challenge of doing that and maintaining it. But it would be interesting to see what he could bring to another team if it was to be the likes of Aston Martin, and if he could then bring them to the front and eke out as much performance as possible. But then you see the likes of Hamilton. He's only ever driven in Formula One. He doesn't have any interest in, or as far as I'm aware, going to somewhere like the likes of IndyCar. And then there's Fernando Alonso, who has done the Indy 500. He's raced in Le Mans and wants to try a bit of everything. So I'd say it's different for everyone, but I can tell you now that everyone on that grid wants to be on the top step of that podium.
One of the most intriguing stories around Verstappen at the moment is that he could maybe take a sabbatical next year, just see how the rules go, and then pick a team almost for 2027. And that's an idea that was mentioned to me without me even asking, by someone quite close to Max Verstappen. So I wouldn't rule that out as an idea either. I don't know whether they're just playing games, of course, just to sort of stir the pot a bit. But why not? He's talked about wanting to, as Abby said, Le Mans is the one that he's really interested in. He goes testing in GT3 cars a lot. He's either racing his Formula One car, or he's racing a GT3 Aston Martin, or he's racing online. He just races. That's all he does, basically, Max Verstappen. I always think it's a bit of a laugh when he says, "Oh, I'm just going to go off and do something else," because quite often with drivers, I mean, sometimes they do it. Like Alonso, for example, did go off and do it. Did do the Indy 500, did win Le Mans twice.
Bit of Dakar as well.
And he's done Dakar, and I think he wants to go back to Dakar probably when he's 75 now, Fernando Alonso. But if you're Max Verstappen and you're earning $75 million basic and you're driving a Formula One car, okay, you could go and race another racing car somewhere else, but you're going to be doing it in a less good car for a lot less money. So are you really going to go and do that?
But when you're being paid 75 million, you're not in it for the money anymore, are you? So surely it's out of pure enjoyment that he would go off and do something else.
It's hard to I don't know, but I'm guessing it's probably quite hard to turn down $75 million a year, right?
I hope he's invested wisely.
But what I find so kind of crazy is that he probably could be out of the seat for a while. He's got that confidence that he can take a step back and still be in a seat the following year. He's got that value and he knows his value and that he can be an asset to any team.
Yeah, not every driver can do that, can they? Right, we've seen off McLaren and Red Bull, but Andrew, I suppose we need to give a word here to Mercedes and how week in, week out right now, they have made a step up from where they have been overall in this ground effect era, it seems. And George Russell is having the best start to a season in his entire career so far.
Well, it's Mercedes' best start to a season since 2021. You know, they've really struggled with this regulation set that's been in since 2022. And George Russell's been one of the most outstanding drivers of the season so far. Really, really driving well. They're not quite at McLaren's pace, but they're probably the consistently, although he's not third in the championship, Verstappen is. In a way, Russell and Mercedes are probably the most consistently next best team driver combination because they haven't had the ups and downs that Red Bull have had to the extremes. Red Bull had a bad weekend in China, for example, and another bad weekend in Bahrain, whereas Russell's kept this sort of, he's basically kept his average all the way along. So really good for them and encouraging for them actually as well, but to give a sense that they've finally got on top of these rules and understanding how to make the car quick.
Just as we're going to put them all in the bin.
Yeah.
But I mean, how impressed have you been, Abby, by George Russell? Obviously, we know he's pretty nifty anyway, but to really step up in the wake of Lewis Hamilton's departure, it feels like he really has.
Yeah, I would say he was in Lewis's shadow a little bit to begin with, and that promotion he had from Williams, he never got to prove himself and show he can lead the team. So now Lewis has stepped aside. Even when he was outperforming him last year, it was tough for him. So this year it seems like he's got a rookie teammate. He's the one that needs to make the difference here, and he's really come into his own and is showing Toto, look, I can be the future of the Mercedes team.
In terms of the Constructors' Championship, McLaren lie at the top, then it's Mercedes, third are Red Bull, and Andrew, Ferrari are fourth, and it's not been the start to the season they wanted. It feels like an outlier now, that sprint win for Lewis Hamilton in China, but upgrades for the team in Bahrain last weekend, some more upgrades this weekend too. Is there any signs of promise to bump themselves up the order and challenge a bit more consistently for podiums?
Well, I think we'll have to wait and see this weekend. So they went into the season expecting to pick up where they left off, which was basically with the equal fastest car to McLaren, because let's not forget they came very close to winning the Constructors' Championship last year. Only missed out by a sort of handful of points at the end. But they've not made the progress that McLaren have made over the winter. And the sprint win came about, I think, because Hamilton is really great around China, and they locked into a setup early on in the weekend where other people quite hadn't perhaps got one, and qualifying comes fast in a sprint, and then obviously track position defines so much in Formula One these days, and he sort of capitalised on that by leading from the front in really impressive Hamilton-esque style. But the car hasn't generally had that level of performance when everybody's had a chance to really maximise their potential. The new floor that came in Bahrain, it didn't give that much performance, but they're hoping it will unlock. This often happens with upgrades in Formula One, that it will unlock a new sort of avenue, and this will be a good test for it this weekend.
Well, let's see how Ferrari go. But Abby, on Lewis Hamilton as well, and I suppose equally the same can be said for the likes of Carlos Sainz. When you're joining a new team, how long does it actually take to get up to speed? Because, of course, this Hamilton has been in known surroundings for the last decade. Same engineer, more or less the same people around him. He knows where all the switches are on the steering wheel. Just how difficult is it when you're launched, when you move schools and you start afresh?
I mean, Mercedes was built around Lewis. It was his team. So now he's gone into someone else's playground, and it's Charles's playground. He is the lead driver. He's been there since day dot, and it's going to be tough for him. And it's new people. It's a new language. It's obviously Italian. It's a lot for him to take on, and a whole new philosophy of a car. It's a lot for a driver to adapt to, and not just that, like I said, the steering wheel. There's so much you've got to be on top of, and in such a short period of time as well. He's only been released from his contract in the new year into 2025. So it was a lot of work to do over the winter. But in my opinion, I think he's not doing a bad job at all. It's just trying to get through some of them gripes that Ferrari car seems to be hindering him with.
Yeah, well, the two Ferrari drivers currently 5th and 7th in the drivers' standings. Leclerc ahead of Hamilton. Let's just look at the best of the rest, Andrew. It's always my favourite topic of conversation. And despite, Alpine did well last time out in Bahrain, got their first points on the board with a brilliant drive from Pierre Gasly. But it's Haas who sit 5th in the Constructors' Championship. I mean, if anybody's tuned in for Australia, you'd think, how on earth has that happened? That car was the slowest. It looked undrivable. But now they're off the back of a couple of double points finishes, some brilliant strategy calls for Ocon's car in Bahrain, and they are best of the rest right now.
Yeah, I mean, they had a really tough start to the year in Australia, as you said. And after that weekend, the team principal, Ayo Komatsu, was talking about this major aerodynamic instability that they had. And then they turned up in China the following weekend, and they'd got it pretty much sorted already, which is quite remarkable. I think let's not rule out the drivers as well. I think Esteban Ocon and Ollie Behrman have both done an outstanding job so far this season. Apart from Australia, where the car was all at sea, they've really delivered, I think, what the car's potential was. Other teams have had problems. Carlos Sainz took a bit of time to find his feet at Williams. Alpine were the next other team in that sort of next level of the midfield, if you like. Their rookie driver Jack Doohan's had 2 big crashes which have affected his potential. And so they've capitalised on that. It'll be interesting to see whether they can keep it going, though, once Williams and Alpine particularly begin to sort of hit you would expect to hit their sort of more consistent level more often.
Yeah, Abby, what have you made of some of the new rookie drivers that have come in this season? I mean, we've had quite a few 6, the likes of Ollie Behrman in the Haas, Jack Doohan in the Alpine, but Liam Lawson's obviously had a bit of a rough start to the year where maybe some unknown quantities like Isaac Hadjar have actually really impressed quite a lot of people. What have you made of the crop that have come into Formula One this season?
It's been really exciting to watch, and it's the first year in a while where we've had quite a lot of rookies enter the championship. And I, like you say, Isaac Hadjar, you can't ignore him. He's probably one of the ones that I think was the most underrated coming in, and he's had the least mileage under his belt in terms of testing, as well as Gabriel Bortoleto. I don't know how much mileage he's had, but he's stood out, and I do feel bad actually for Gabriel, because he had such a stellar year in Formula 2. Of course, he actually ended up beating Isaac, but in that Kick Sauber car, he's struggling to really show anything, and it's frustrating to see, really.
Well, how do you go for Gabriel Bortoleto, Brazilian rookie? We actually had him on 5 Live, I think, last year in one of our practice sessions. He won Formula 2. He's the reigning champion, the top of the second best category before you get to Formula 1. And then, as you say, he's last in the championship. Sauber haven't got the car that's going to allow him to consistently challenge for points. How does a driver manage that change when you're at the top of your game in Formula 2 and then you're at the bottom, at the pinnacle of the sport?
I think you just have to remember you're in the worst performing car. The people that you were racing last year, although you beat them, they're in Mercedes or the Racing Bulls, which is, at the end of the day, performing quite well. Even the Haas with Ollie Behrman. So I think you've got to really keep that in the forefront of your mind and just show the team that you deserve to stay there. Obviously, they're rebranding soon to Audi, so show that he can continue on. And he's got a really experienced teammate in Nico Hülkenberg. He's been in Formula One for a while now, and he's been around and he knows his stuff. So trying to eke out as much information and knowledge from Nico would be my kind of viewpoint.
People in F1 know what they're looking at. When it doesn't matter what the car is like, if you're good, you'll shine. And so, take Fernando Alonso, for example. He made his first season in a Minardi. It was a terrible car, but he was qualifying it 4 or 5 places ahead of where it should have been qualified and racing it really impressively. And people take notice of that sort of thing. So in Bortoleto's case, he's got a lot of promise, managed by Alonso. And I think his bottom line is he's got to beat Nico Hülkenberg. If he doesn't beat Nico Hülkenberg, because Hülkenberg's a solid, competent driver who's been around for a long time, got a lot of experience, but he's not the absolute top level. If Bortoleto wants a future, he's got to beat Hülkenberg. He's got to think about nothing else.
Now, Benson, you were mentioning the good old glory days of Fernando Alonso. We seem a far cry from those right now. That Aston Martin car does not look fun to drive. And after Bahrain, I think is dismal too strong a word to describe Aston Martin right now?
Well, in Bahrain, it almost looked like he was back in that Minardi from 2001, didn't it? It was probably the worst car around Bahrain. It's been a really disappointing start to the year for them. They had the target of trying to sort of work out why they hadn't been able to develop in season in the last 2 years. 'Cause it feels like a long time ago in Aston Martin terms, but at the beginning of 2023, they were the second best team behind Red Bull. And then they sort of fell away through the year. Same thing happened last year from a slightly lower starting point. This year they've started pretty low, but they wanted to try and prove that their developments were going to work on, keep them on track, move them forward through the year. Obviously it's early days, too early to say that. But what they have been saying is that Adrian Newey's not going to waste any of his time, that's not their terms, that's my terms, on 2025. He's all in on 2026. I'm a little bit surprised to hear that, and I don't even know whether it's completely true. I would have thought if there was some obvious low-hanging fruit on the 2025 car that he could spot when he first came in, he would just go, change that, and
wave his
see
wand.
what happened, wave his magic wand. Why not do that? And I'm not saying that, I wouldn't be surprised if that has actually happened behind the scenes, but they want to play it down a bit. But yeah, I think what it's underlined is that we were talking about Verstappen earlier. It'd be a big call for Max Verstappen to pick Aston Martin Honda next year as the team that's going to go well. Even under a regulation rule set, you've got to know what you're doing. You've got to trust your tools. And until they can prove that they're able to design a car and develop it through a year, they can't trust their tools. So you can't expect them to suddenly emerge at the front if they can't do those basic things. And that's a real fundamental concern for them at the moment.
So if it's not a straight reset for all the teams and Aston Martin and Adrian Newey suddenly produce the title challenging car for next year,
they might.
But let's say it's not, but it's an improvement. Will Fernando Alonso be around in Formula One long enough to reap the rewards of a competitive car again and one last title championship bid?
Well, his contract runs to the end of next year. I interviewed him in Abu Dhabi at the end of last season, and he said he was going to go into 2026 thinking of it as his last season. But of course, Alonso being Alonso, he didn't quite leave it there. He's like, maybe, of course, if I feel still competitive that year, then I might think about carrying on. Of course, that would require someone else to want him to carry on. He's going to be 45 in the middle of next year. However well he's apparently performing, is a Formula One team really going to commit to a man who's 45 and a half at the end of that year and give him a new contract? I think that's a big ask.
You're not doing multi-years, are you? You're doing one.
Certainly, you wouldn't have thought so. But then this is Fernando Alonso. He's a force of nature. He's completely unique. I know you can't say completely unique, can you? I should know better than that as a journalist. He's unique. And he's rewritten the rule book in so many different ways in his career. So I wouldn't rule anything out with him.
And Abby, you worked with Alonso during his time at Alpine. So what tips and tricks did you pick up? What's he told you about his future?
I didn't necessarily work directly with him, but I was close to a lot of the engineers and people specifically in the ops room that he worked with quite closely. And what he adds to a team is invaluable. He's got so much knowledge, and we've seen it before, his capacity. He's thinking about a million things other than driving whilst he's driving. He's his own strategist, he's his own race engineer. He's a very, very clever man, and he's always looking for that little bit of performance he can eke out. And actually, some of the new systems he introduced at Alpine and things that he developed, I probably can't go too in depth with it.
Come on, what did he introduce?
I mean, even just like the power steering, he did so much work on that to get it to feel like a race car, to get it to feel like you don't get the feeling of the tyre because it has the power steering. So making it as accurate as possible, and it's more for driver preference and to get a feel for where the limit is. But it's just some interesting things that you hear, and it's like, wow, you've got to be experienced to know what you want in things like that. That is one of your really vital feeling points. I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but it's one of your sensory things that makes you react and how you drive the car, and being able to be so confident in how you want that to be, I thought that was pretty incredible. But yeah, other little things as well and systems that I thought was quite clever, and they were all his idea, which, knowing what he did for Alpine, I can only imagine what he's been doing with Aston Martin for the past 4 or 5 years.
It's things like that, I suppose, that make him a cut above the rest and make him Fernando Alonso. Right, just before we have a little dive into what we've seen today on the track, we have some exciting news. The checkered flag is going weekly for the rest of the season. No more waiting for the next race to get your fix. No more weeks without the dulcet tones of Andrew Benson. Don't worry, we've got some brilliant names, past and present, joining us as well on the podcast throughout the year. So make sure you're subscribed to BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone settings so you never miss a new episode. Right. We're in Saudi Arabia at this fast and furious Jeddah Corniche circuit. Abby, you've won here last year in F1 Academy. What's it like as a track? It feels and looks relentless.
It is incredible, especially driving under the night, under the floodlights. Everything comes up on you so quickly, it's tight, and you also can't see very far ahead because they're all blind corners. So you're often getting to full power before you can even see where you're going to end up, and that's in a high gear around high-speed corners. So you've got to be that much more concentrated going around here. There's so much to think about, and also the thing with the traffic has become quite apparent in the sessions that we've been watching. You can't see if there's someone on a cool down lap, and it's a very big track for high risk, high reward.
Yeah, there were a few close shaves, especially in that second practice session. But Andrew, once again, after FP2, which is the more representative session, that's under the lights in the cooler temperatures once the sun has set, McLaren are the team to beat.
They very much are. The first and second again, Lando Norris ahead of Oscar Piastri, and Norris, I have to say, looks more comfortable than he has done for the last couple of weekends. People who've been reading the BBC Sport website and following Formula One this year will know that although Norris is leading the championship, paradoxically, he's not been that comfortable in the McLaren car, and actually probably Oscar Piastri's been the more convincing-looking McLaren driver. That didn't appear to be the case today. It's only Friday practice, of course, but he's a tenth and a bit ahead, Norris, and was consistently putting in those quick laps whenever he was out on the track. Again, I think another close battle between them for pole. And on race pace, we didn't get a proper picture in the second session because Yuki Tsunoda crashed his Red Bull. We'll get onto that in a minute, I'm sure. But on the laps we did see with Piastri and Max Verstappen, the McLaren was much faster than the Red Bull. So again, it's looking like it's going to be a Norris-Piastri battle for the win so far.
Why do you think Norris is seemingly more comfortable here in Saudi Arabia?
Well, I don't know, and he might not be when it comes to tomorrow. It's only Friday practice, but there's a couple of things it could be. Obviously, every track is different, and it's a different corner profile in Jeddah, so it may be that the weaknesses of the car that he was feeling on some of the tracks recently are not as apparent on these types of corners. The other thing is that McLaren are aware of why Norris is struggling, and they've got some upgrades coming that they hope will help him, and of course they've been trying to help him even without those upgrades. So it may be that the work that he's done with the team has also helped him feel more comfortable on this track.
Then, Abby, after McLaren, who are we looking at here? Do we think a Ferrari of Charles Leclerc can spring a surprise, or even perhaps Max Verstappen after the really tough weekend in Bahrain? Can they bounce back and throw anything when it comes to qualifying on Saturday?
I think what's so exciting is we don't really know. Of course, we know that the McLaren is really competitive and they're pretty much set to be fighting at the front. But after that, it's all such a mixed bag. I mean, George, you can't ignore his form recently. He's been getting the absolute most out of that Mercedes and putting it at the front when it matters. So potentially George in the Mercedes, Leclerc, we always know that he loves a good qualifying lap and pulling it out the bag when it matters. But it's whether Ferrari can give him give him what he needs. And after that, gosh, I mean, even Sainz is looking really good. He could get a top 5 in qualifying. Who knows?
Yeah, Carlos Sainz finished 5th for Williams after FP2, just behind Charles Leclerc, who was 4th in the Ferrari. His teammate Lewis Hamilton way off, down in 13th spot. So Hamilton's still needing to find some more pace in that car. And then Verstappen was 3rd, just behind the 2 McLarens after FP2. But Abby, Andrew mentioned it there. There was a crash towards the end of FP2 with Yuki Tsunoda, Verstappen's teammate, in what will be his 3rd race at the team, having come in to replace Liam Lawson. But it was a bit of a clumsy manoeuvre from, it was a bit of a clumsy crash from Tsunoda. Can you just talk us through what happened?
It was, like you say, incredibly clumsy, and he just braked for the last corner. It's a hairpin, so heavy braking zone after the longest and fastest straight of the circuit. And then, just turned in, clipped the front left on the inside barrier, and then become a passenger and sailed into the outside wall in quite spectacular fashion. Although it's a slow speed corner, he still hit it with some force. Obviously tight margins here in Jeddah, and some damage to the rear, definitely damage to the front end of the car. Probably not a confidence booster going into the rest of the weekend, even in that hard to drive Red Bull. It's not what you want. And it's just disappointing, really, because it is such a silly mistake, something that drivers at this level really shouldn't be making.
That will, may well come back to bite Yuki Tsunoda. We'll see how that unfolds as the team get that stricken Red Bull back to the garage. What happens, though, as a driver in between that practice session and gearing up for the first competitive session of the weekend, which will be qualifying? What are you going off to do in between?
I mean, in Jeddah, it's really hot, so you'll be doing a lot to cool down in between, kind of take a bit of pressure off, especially if you're in Yuki's situation, talking to people who you trust around you, getting in the right headspace. And a lot of it is routines as well. Before the session, doing your warm-up, and whether it's a little bit of meditation or breathing exercises, stretching, and then going through your notes and everything kind of, which has worked throughout the testing and what hasn't worked. And the track's also going to be changing constantly throughout qualifying, getting better and better. So making sure that they're on top of following where the track goes.
Andrew, whilst we're making our way, just having a little look down the order, I mean, Tsunoda ended up 6th with that, despite crashing, except at that time earlier. Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari ended down in 13th spot. Again, it seems like we've come to a track where he actually hasn't had the best results here. If you take that win away in 2021, he's had some bad qualifyings here in the last couple of years. But he does seem, again, to have that pace deficit to Charles Leclerc.
He really does. He looks like 4 or 5 tenths off Leclerc on Friday, both on one lap and on a long run. Yesterday, Hamilton was talking I hesitate to use the phrase odd tones, but almost odd tones in the way he was describing Leclerc's ability to live with a car with oversteer. He said it was very impressive, and he hasn't quite got the Ferrari dialed into his driving style yet, and I think that really seems to be showing on this high-speed circuit, at least today.
Well, let's see if Hamilton can bounce back. We still have another practice session on the Saturday before we go qualifying. Let's have a look at some of the midfield standouts, because actually Alpine, off the back, we spoke about them earlier, off the back of picking up points, their first points of the season, Abby, with Pierre Gasly with a bit of a spectacular drive, really. Only just lost out to Max Verstappen in the final lap, did Gasly, and he popped up a time that was good enough for 8th spot at the end of FP2. So could Alpine throw their hat into the ring for a best of the rest here this weekend?
I think Pierre has been known for outdriving where a car can be. Obviously, before, when he was in the AlphaTauri, he had some really standout moments, and it seems like he's carrying that form forward into the Alpine, and he's managing to pull a car that probably isn't kind of in the realm of scoring points. He's on the edge of being able to be there quite consistently. So potentially best of the rest. We'll see them. The likes of, like I've already said, Williams, I think, are looking really good. But there's still some teams that seem to be ultimately struggling, like the Kick Sauber and Aston Martin, not finding much progress really.
Yeah, if I was to pick someone to get in the mix of the top 4 teams who's not in the top 4 teams, I'd go for Carlos Sainz on the evidence of today. He's looked really good on both the short run and the long run, particularly the long runs actually. He's in there in the mix with the top 4 teams actually on long run averages. What tends to happen with those sort of midfield cars is that even if they qualify high, they fall back a little during the race, but at least on the evidence of today, Sainz might even be able to mix it during the race as well.
And this is Sainz now feeling like he's more at home in the environment.
Certainly looks like it, yeah. Certainly looks like he's made a step in the last couple of races.
Yeah, because he felt, I think there was a lot of waning, as we've said, in Bahrain for both Williams drivers. Albon was just in there as well, finished off in the top 10. Bit of work to do for the likes of Kimi Antonelli, who had a bit of a clatter with the wall, not as much damage caused as Yuki Tsunoda, but he didn't come out for the last 5 minutes when we were under red flag. So bit of a debrief there, and as for the rookie driver, just a bit of a confidence boost needed again after something like that.
Yeah, he brushed the wall, although he said it was only a little brush. It definitely was quite a big hit. And yeah, going into the next session, he'll probably be a bit more cautious of where the walls are. But I mean, these are high-class drivers. He'll find his feet and get that confidence back pretty quickly, I imagine.
Okay, so predictions, quali, pole position for the Saturday?
Orange. McLaren. Papaya.
But which one? Come on. You can't sit on the fence.
You know what? Watching Lando, although he managed to put a really good lap out the bag, he still is making mistakes. He's running off in turn 1 and he's finding the limits and going over them limits. I'm thinking it could be Oscar because he would just put it together, I think.
Okay. Well, Andrew, I mean, you've been saying, and it does look like Lando feels more comfortable so far this weekend.
So I'm going to say Norris, and I agree with Abby. He's made more mistakes than Piastri, but the character has been different. The last couple of races, he's made the mistakes and not managed to get the laps together before qualifying, and then he's carried on that into qualifying. Today, he's been making the odd mistake, but also getting the laps together. And that's why I think it'll be Norris this weekend.
Okay, are we going to get an exciting race, though? Come on, we're selling this. Sunday, under the lights, in Jeddah.
I don't think anyone's going to get near the McLarens, but I think not anywhere near them, actually. I think this could even be their most dominant race of the year, judging by the evidence of
last week.
Yeah, judging by their evidence of today. This looks more dominant than Bahrain, I have to say, on Friday at least. But I think the race between the two of them is going to be really close, and as long as you can get invested in that, and why wouldn't you? They're two nice guys, they're two great racing drivers. Let's enjoy it.
Okay. Well, look, I think we're just about out of time there, but thank you very much, Andrew Benson, Abby Pulling. The race is on Sunday afternoon on 5 Sports Extra. Lights out at 6 p.m. Build up from 5:45. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. We'll see you tomorrow.